Welcome to the Emerald Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Doyle, and on this podcast I speak to different Irish athletes about their highs, their lows, biggest battles, biggest successes, and why they fell in love with their sport. In this episode I chat to Mayo superstar Conor Mortimer. Some of Conor's greatest successes were winning 5 Connacht titles with Mayo and winning an All-Star. I chat to Conor about playing for Shrule Glencorrib, his county career with Mayo, and so much more. Without further ado, Conor Mortimer. Conor, how's the form? Thanks very much for coming on to the podcast.
All good, Chrissy. All good, yeah. Form is good. Chipping away at work and busy, really. But yeah, all is good. Form isn't bad. Not bad at the moment.
Good. And tell me this: are you still playing a bit, or are you coaching, managing, or?
No, I've been managing the last 4 years. I was at Round Towers and Luss there in Dublin for the last 2. I finished up with them there probably last month. So just taking a bit of time out now, man, in the off season and see what happens for next, really. So yeah, just enjoying the bit of time off, bit of time at home, and but yeah, the itch is starting to come back again. So I'll start looking around now and see where I can take my talents to for next year.
Where you might end up. And tell me, how did you find stopping playing and just going into a bit of coaching and managing? Did you find it was still nice to keep in touch, or did you find it very different? Or
look, I was playing club football when I finished up county football for a couple of years, and then I stopped. I just felt the need to get involved coaching wise in terms of keeping the routine that I had as a player. In terms of the couple of nights training and then a Saturday or Sunday or whatever, and just keeping that routine. I've had that routine since I was probably 13 or 14 years of age, so I had it for like 20 years or so. I would have probably found it a little bit more difficult to adjust to being at home 7 nights a week, not really having anything to be doing, not knowing what to be doing, I suppose, effectively. So I just got straight into it, and have been at it since then. So the transition was quite easy. And look, managing or coaching is probably the closest thing you're going to get to playing. Without obviously actually putting on the boots yourself and stuff. But yeah, I didn't find it too difficult, to be honest. No.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I suppose when you have a long career too, like you've done your part, you've played it, and it's time for a new venture as well.
Yeah, I was like, I would have played. I was involved in county teams from probably 14 up. Obviously not as intense 14, 15, 16, but then I was playing under 21 at 17, so I'd probably 4 or 5 years under 21. Box that in with senior. Then I was senior at 18, 19 as well, and I was playing that level, 30, 31. So I was about 15 years, 16 years at mixing club football, college football, playing a bit of soccer. And yeah, when you're playing it, you don't think of the time span or the physicality on the body and stuff, because you're obviously enjoying it and stuff like that. But no, I had a good innings. I could have probably played on for a couple of more years, but I'm probably content with what I had when I played. Obviously the end of it was a bit messy for all sides, but in terms of the playing side, I had a lot of time on the field, and I have no real qualms with that. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you had a long stint at it, and some lads are unfortunate too with injuries or different circumstances too. They don't get that time, and it's not even up to them though. So the fact you got all that time is brilliant too.
Yeah, I was lucky injury-wise. I had a couple of injuries, but I didn't miss too much time with it. I was probably a 24-hour athlete at that time in terms of I didn't really start working properly till I was 30, you know what I mean? I was working with that family business at home and come and go, and obviously for training and stuff like that. And I wasn't sweating as such when I was working at that age, but I think I was very lucky to that point in terms of, I suppose, particularly the injury side of it. I got lucky pretty much all the way through. And I suppose longevity comes from not being injured. I mean, and that's mentally and physically. I mean, people, obviously, I've been a part of squad for a long time and seen guys who are injured, and it takes a toll when you can't be on the field training. You might be there getting rehab and more physio, and you're doing your rehab on the side of the field, and that's difficult. I never really had that in terms of watching guys trying to get back fit, because I was generally, I suppose, ready to play pretty much all the time, and I was lucky in that sense, where other guys probably aren't as lucky. You know what I mean? Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately for some, they do miss out. Tell me this: I want to talk to you, and I want to take you back. Starting out with Shrule Glencorrib, what was that like growing up, and when did you know like that? I suppose this is my game. I love this game, and I'm going to, I suppose, give everything for it.
Look, obviously where I'm from, and I suppose I played all the way up through at underage with my friends and my local friends, and I like, obviously my brothers had played before club level, and I obviously got the draw from them in terms of partaking. I obviously played a lot of soccer when I was younger as well, so I would have fancied myself as a good soccer player. I played in goals when I was young, but I suppose in terms of the football, look at I used to, yourself, country towns. I mean, you're playing football all the time, and you're obviously it's practicing all the time effectively. Every minute we had, we were down the pitch, or kicking across the road, or down on the green playing soccer, or whatever it was. And I mean, when I started playing with Shrule, we were junior 2, went up to junior 1, went to intermediate, went to senior.
Unbelievable.
The funny thing is, we talk about bad luck. I mean, we played in junior final, lost it, intermediate final, lost it, and then we got to a senior final and lost it. But a small club, like with maybe 300-400 people, like in the town, the village. But we punched above our weight. Like, we'd have got a lot of good players, like, in that time, and obviously ourselves. My brothers, Dermot Gurry, Rona Welch, Kevin Walsh, Mark Ronaldson, they're all played at county level at underage and a couple of senior games, and we did very well with what we had, and they were the best times, I suppose, in my career when I went all the way through. We had some, and very enjoyable. Like, Mayo club football it's tough, but high quality, and it toughens you up for when you get to county level. I think that's Shrule. Yeah, well, that's where it started, and effectively that's where it'll probably end, in terms of you'll never forget your times with your home club. I've been in Dublin for the last 12 or 13 years, but I always love to get home, and if I can catch a match when I'm down there, all well and good.
Yeah,
they were good times. Good times.
Yeah, and I'd say it's just, when you say it's a small village, you're surely so well together, let's say, because it's when there's only so much of you in it. I'd say you nearly get behind each other, if you get me.
Very, very, very tight-knit club at that time. It was funny. I like go back to before there was mobile phones, like, and you're meeting on a Saturday or a Sunday and you're training at this time, and everyone is just there. There's no waiting, there's no texting or ringing or any of that stuff. And it's funny thinking back, like, it was a mad time, really, compared to what people do now in terms of communication with guys, and but a great club, a great village, and look at the people down there, are great people as well. And they've seen a lot of success, and they're continuing to do so. I mean, the underage is very good down there now. They're financially stable, adding a couple of pitches there at the moment, and it's an up and coming club, to be fair.
And just want to move you on to, I suppose, a happier time. I'd say I couldn't wait to ask you this. It's one of my favourite games. I've often thrown it on my father just to have a look back, because it's, I suppose, a bit controversial as well. The Hillgate game with Dublin and Croke Park in 06. Talk me through that game. Was it like pre-planned to warm up down at the hill? Was that all put together, or did it just end up happening?
No, it wasn't really. Like, my recollection of it, is we had played the quarter final, I think, and warmed up on that end. I don't know. I think it was 2 weeks before that. I think maybe a week before that, it was replayed for Mana. I think it was at the time. And I think before we went out, someone said Dublin are down there, and then I think Brady or someone just said, "Let's go down there." We warm up there, and we did. And there was obviously a bit of ructions or whatever in between, but I think in hindsight it added to the occasion. I think neither team probably got a right warm up done. But like I've always said, and I say it to the day, like it was a good game, and I had a good game that day, and like it was good for me in terms of because I was living in Dublin, and I was in college in Dublin, and Cluxon was a club mate of mine at the time, and it was special for me personally. But as a group, and obviously you've looked at that match yourself. I mean, if I was a Dublin player or supporter after that game, I'd be looking back thinking, how did we lose?
Yeah.
As opposed to how did we win? Like they had leads, 2 or 3 leads in that game that in today's game you'd be crucified if you gave them away. But however, we obviously won the game, and one of them games that I suppose will long live in the memory. It was a good quality game of football, but I've always said Dublin lost that game as opposed to us winning that game. Even though I think it's a cliche, but it's if you watch the game enough times, you'll see it's very obvious.
Yeah, there was lots. They missed a few goal chances, I think, as well during the game. But you'd have to say credit to you as well, because sometimes Mayo would get, I suppose, the dart of not being able to finish off teams or maybe falling short. And in that game, you were able to claw yourselves back to actually come out and win.
We did well. We did well in that game, to be fair. And I think at that time we weren't as mentally strong as maybe the Mayo teams in the last 10 years. I think the quality was a little bit different in the last, the 2012, 13, 14, 15 era. Better players, better mentality. They're expecting to win those games where we may not have been expecting to beat Dublin. And I think back then, when you're a country team and you're playing the likes of Dublin, the big capital city, and for young people, that's what it is effectively. I mean, it's like, I don't know, maybe your Macclesfield soccer team and you're going in to play, a Man United. Obviously it's counties you're talking about, but some people in Mayo at that time, you wouldn't be in Dublin every week. You may go to Dublin for an All-Ireland final, or you may go to Dublin for a concert. It's a special occasion going to the capital city. So that would have added to it in terms of us beating them at that time. And it's obviously very different. Obviously, I've been living up here for X amount of time, but there's still people in Mayo that would still see Dublin as being, a different world essentially, because they don't be in it very, very regularly. I mean, that is the reality of it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's an outlook. Now, I never really thought about myself, because I would have said that I suppose at that time maybe you were a lot closer, but there was this big hype with Dublin too, and the star players always there as well. Around.
There always is with Dublin. There always is with Dublin, and that'll never change. Even if they're not going well, Dublin is the big game. The media will write it up. All your media drivers are based in Dublin. They're going to promote it bigger in the city, and that's just the nature of it. And that's why it was always nice to get a scalp over them. Always.
That's fun, yeah. And would you say 2006, because I know it was, you got the All-Star, you were top scorer that year. Would you say at inter-county level that was your best year, or the year you felt, I really did well? Did you feel that yourself?
I would have thought I had a better year in 2004, to be honest, than 6. Like if I went through my career, my 10 or 12 years of senior football, like I suppose like every player, I would have always had the majority of good games rather than not good games. 2 All-Ireland finals weren't great, to be fair. But outside of that, if I think back to quarterfinals of 4 with Laois, Fermanagh, Armagh, Dublin, Galway, there was a lot of good games in there that I would have played. And like, there was obviously poor games that you would have played where you're marked by good players and stuff like that, and that's just the nature of the game. But I wouldn't necessarily say one year was better than the other, because there could have been a couple of tight, slow performance games in '06 as well. Obviously, the Dublin game was a different game, but there's always a mixed bag. So I'd be cautious enough saying, "Oh, this year was better than that year." I would have felt '04 I was probably better than '06, but that's just me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was terrific, and geez, some of the scores you got and stuff was unbelievable as well. So I could definitely see how you might say '04 as well. Not to bring on to darker days, Ramon, but I just want to ask you about mentally. You lost to Kerry in the All Ireland final '04 and '06. How was it mentally? Because you obviously at county level you put in so much. How was it trying to bounce back each time and stuff, or did you just feel like that was an amazing Kerry team, to be fair too? But how did it feel, I suppose, mentally to try and bounce back?
Look, I think the second year was obviously a lot harder than the first. It's very disappointing losing All Ireland. But I think for us, the manner of the defeats was probably a little bit different. I think, look, at losing All Ireland, as I said, is difficult. But I mean, if it's a competitive game and you've performed, maybe you're not good enough on the day, fine. But we were pretty poor on the two finals, which is probably the most disappointing aspect of it. But look, at county level, you don't really have time to be dwelling too much on it, because you're back at it again maybe 4 or 5 weeks later. You're back at your club 2 weeks later, maybe a week later. And then you're back at county stuff again coming into November, probably doing the gym, weights, then back in the pitch Christmas, January. So you don't really have time to be dwelling too much on it. So I'd say I was pretty quick to get things out of my head anyway. I was never really a dweller, shall we say. I would never dwell on too much. I always knew, and you'll have seen a lot of scores that I've got over the years, particularly in club football. You obviously wouldn't have seen them, but I would have got to a stage very, very quickly where I would be scoring without looking at the posts effectively, from merely practice. So I kind of got to a stage where all I needed in the game was the ball, as opposed to where I was in the field. And I always reverted back to just practicing. Like, I had a bad game in the All Ireland, for me, it wasn't usually a football thing. I was a very slight player. I had pace and I had a good turn and so on, but I wasn't physically big or strong or whatever like that. And it only came after the 6 All Ireland that I started doing a bit of lifting. I never lifted up to that point effectively. Because obviously physically I wasn't strong enough at that time. My skill set was good, but the physical side of it, players were getting to the same fitness wise and speed wise that I had, and so you obviously need to get some more physically stronger and stuff, and that came after that. But I suppose I had got away with it to that point, and obviously then it kind of realised that you got to change things, and obviously did that for a few years, and that was pretty much that. But on the mental side of it, I wouldn't have. Very disappointing, but I think you got to just park it and move on, and that's pretty much the bottom line. You can dwell on things for too long, man, and you can see it even nowadays with people, and it's it can be work or it can be family or I don't know, you might see it out there. Your weather's a little bit better than here, but there's so much talk around about mental health and all this kind of stuff. I mean, if I go back to the times we played, man, and you got beaten in a final or whatever, you won a final, you had a big session after, and you'd be down the dumps for 2 or 3 days, man. The people who are feeling that now have mental health problems, where we were just burned after 2 or 3 days out, after losing a final, and you're down the dumps and blah, blah, blah. So, it's all interconnected effectively in terms of the way things have progressed. And, there's a far bigger insight now on people's mindset in terms of even, the likes of Limerick hurlers, for example, in terms of they have a top class sports psychologist there, and players open up to her and making sure they're mentally as prepared as they are physically. And we didn't have that when we were playing effectively to that degree, you know what I mean? That was just the nature of it. So you just train yourself to be as strong mentally as you can, and that's pretty much it.
That's it, yeah. Do you think it would have made a difference having maybe a psychologist at that? Do you think it would have made a difference maybe getting over the line? Do you think it was something, if you had to pick something that you could have had maybe that's, let's say, in the modern game now that you needed, would it have?
I'll tell you what, I don't, and I'll tell you why, because there wasn't as much span on it as there is publicly now in terms of people being open to it and opening up. We had psychiatrists, we had sports psychiatrists, we had all that stuff at various different stages in our times. But you know, some like old school players, and I would have been one of those. It's you know, what is this like? I want to go out and train, I want to go out and play, I want to go out and kick the balls, I want to do this, that, and the other. Man, I don't have time to be listening to this. Like that's why it wouldn't have worked well at that time. You would have had one or two who bought into it, where you need 30 guys buying into it and to understand that this is going to benefit us as a team. I don't think that mentality was with a lot of our players in those times, whereas it's completely different now, because you see the likes of Limerick, they win All Ireland, the likes of Dublin, and then we had this person and they had that person, and then it's starting to click. Well, you know, they have these added incentives to their team, and they're winning All Ireland. So, you know, it takes a while for that to sink in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And no, just even from listening to what you were saying, just the mindset shift from, let's say, when you were playing there to now is just, it just seems miles apart in terms
Completely
of like
different.
mindset of players. And just something I was interested here as well. So after 2004, let's say, come back in 2006 to the final, did you, like, I know it's only a 2 year spin, but did anything pop up there where you did something a little bit differently to prepare? Was there any, I suppose, an advancement, let's say, even at that stage where you tried something different?
Not particularly, because we had a new manager. We had a new
Yeah, so
manager in charge, so we're kind of on the blink of it's going to be different. 2004, it's a different manager. We're going to set up differently. He's going to see things in the game that can help us in terms of certain scenarios that may happen in the game, and we're going to train these, coach them, and be prepared for the outcome. You know, competitive sport doesn't work like that.
yeah.
So no, I wouldn't say we did anything hugely different. The type of different things would be, you stay in a different hotel, you stay in a, you know, you don't interact with the public, and so on. They're the kind of things that are different that, you know, if you look back at 04 and then go to 06, you know, the outcome is the same. That's the point. At the end of the day, it's 15 against 15. They were better 15 than we were. And it didn't matter if we had Christ the Redeemer in our hotel the night before. It didn't matter. You know, the 15 going on the field the next day was still the same 15 or 20 or whatever it may be. And that's what it boiled down to, effectively.
Yeah, you can, as you say, you can prepare what you want, but if you're up against a better team on the day, or they win their individual battles, you're left powerless, really, no matter what you prepare for.
There's nothing you can do. It's as simple as that, you know, simple as that.
Yeah, and just to take you away from the county scene, because I know you went from Shrule Glencorrib, and you mentioned it there, to Parnells in Dublin. How did you come about making that change, or what was it like? Different club?
I was finishing up college, and there wasn't too much work at home in terms of my field from college, which is sports science and health. And I talked to a couple of clubs in Dublin, and Parnells had bought land and were building a complex at the time, and they were putting a gym in the complex. So my collegiate qualification would have been in leisure, in terms of managing a gym or managing a leisure club or whatever. And I had an option to go to a bank or this job. So one club was to work in the bank, and this club was to work, obviously, in the gym. And I took the gym one because that's kind of where my career was going to go. And I was there. I was 8 years there. Good times, good club. it went poorly in the end, for various different reasons. But I left there, and then I came out to the Glenroyal, and I'm here for 6 years now. I think this year, I think it is 6 years. So in the same field, albeit a bigger facility, but principles are the same really. So that was all to do with the move in Parnells, really.
Yeah, and just on Parnells as well, because in Dublin now there's lots of people coming to work. Were you mixed in with homegrown lads, or did you find there's many lads in your situation that were coming in, just into the club and stuff?
That time, Begley was there, Shorey came up, myself, Johnny Murta from Armagh. There was 4 or 5 that came to Parnells to work at that time. They had money that time in terms of opportunities in roles and in their facility. And so there was a mixed bag. Obviously, the locals and the couple of country lads came in at the one time, and there was a good bond between everybody. Some of them boys will be a couple of my good friends to the day over there. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really.
And did you have any success at that time, or was it?
Look, from where they played, I suppose we played senior championship for 3 or 4 years. Division 1 in the league for 3 or 4 years. Didn't win anything in terms of championships, but we were competing with Ballymun, Crokes, Ballyboden, Coola. These guys, we were very competitive in our time, but we had a very good 15 with a small squad. And, we didn't have the backup in terms of the 2 or 3 years SC. In terms of for the other guys, we didn't have 15 county lads. We might have 6 or 7 at various different times. But yeah, we would have been successful in that regard. It depends on your barometer at what you measure of success. But for me, it was a very successful time on the field for the club. Very successful, yeah. Minus trophies, obviously, but
yeah. I would look at getting so many great players from great clubs like yourself to come and play for the club as well. It really works out well for them too. When you look at Ballyboden now, and just when you're saying a strong 15, but a stronger panel, just when you look at Ballyboden at the moment, it's absolutely frightening almost.
You need a big squad, man. You need 27, 28, and you need at least 4 or 5 positions that are competitive where it's a 50-50 call. Where clubs I've been with the last couple of years, you're 15, hand on heart, you're 15, and if there's someone injured or someone's away, someone else plays. Other than that, typically, are they going to play unless they're really outstanding in training? And that, the more you have, the more you can analyze and then decide who you're going to play into your system and stuff like that. But when you're at smaller clubs, that's kind of what you get compared to when you're at bigger clubs. It's very different.
It's very different, yeah. Tell me, I want to just ask you as well, just for any young kid might be listening. I remember you said when you were kicking points, you didn't even need to look at a post because it was practice. But what advice would you give to maybe a young kid who wants to be the next Conor Mortimer? Like, what advice would you give if he wants to go all the way and get to the top?
Look, it's obviously a cliche when it comes to practice, but I think the biggest thing for kids is to dedicate yourself to it. And I think since I became a parent, and I think this is the most, I suppose, advantage knowledge that I can give is in terms of parents of young children. Like I have a son and a daughter, and I know, he'll play for this team and he'll play for that team. I don't think that's the right approach. I think the approach is what they want to do and what they enjoy doing. Like, as I said, I played soccer and football when I was younger. I preferred soccer. I still do to the day. But it came to a stage where I couldn't commit to being my best in both codes. So I went with the most comfortable one, and obviously in GA and in that term. But, for as I said, in terms of parental and obviously let the child do what they want to do. And it's kind of funny, and I know it's probably a cliche, but sometimes you can see if somebody has it or they haven't it.
Yeah.
Even at a young age, I think it's evident in terms of the way someone kicks the ball, they catch the ball, their movement or whatever. You see little things. But for guys maybe at 13, 14 years of age, it's simply about dedicating yourself to the sport. You have to be selfish in terms of what your friends are doing compared to what you want to do. They might be going to the shopping centre, they might be going to the cinema, or they might be going here, which is fine at times for you to do as well. But ultimately, are you missing out on a practice session that you were like, if I could, I probably practiced on my own more times than I practiced with teams all the way through as a player. Easy.
Would you just went up to the pitch and just kicked balls, or would you just kick scores?
Bag of balls, pitch, bag of balls, scores, run in and get the ball, in and out, in and out, in and out, constantly. I did it for years and years. And that's what I would say to kids in terms of, find the sport that you want to play, that you enjoy the most, and, practice as much as you can and be dedicated to it. And I suppose, the biggest thing for me would be if I was to advise anybody is don't let anybody tell you can't do it. I think that's probably the best piece of advice that I ever got in terms of, you can do what you want if you put your mind to it. And even if it doesn't work out, in your heart and soul, you've done all you can to make it work. Nobody can, you've nobody to answer after that. It's what frustrates me a little bit with some, they're drinking or they're socializing or they're watching matches. And, I know some guys over the years at club teams who are meant to be training, they're watching the Champions League game at home or whatever it is. It's not, I suppose, positive in terms of where you want to be as a player and as a club. Now, bear in mind, young people in today's world have a very different mentality than I would have had when I was a young fella.
Yeah.
There's so much more out there. There's computers, there's life, and I appreciate that. I 100% appreciate that. But for me, to get to where you need to get to, you have to set yourself a standard. And that might sound a little bit stringent in terms of young people, but if you want to play county football is like a young fellow over in England who wants to play championship soccer.
Yeah.
That's the highest they can play. County football is the highest you can play in this country. As opposed to, I suppose, FAI soccer or rugby or whatever it may be. But if you want to be the best at your sport, you got to put the work in and it'll happen to you. But if you don't put the work in, you cut corners, cut cones when you're doing drills, it'll come back and bite you. And that's pretty much where I would be.
Yeah. It shows up in the end because you can tell who's not doing it and who's applying themselves. And a friend of mine used to always say, going to Crow Park, anyone could be in the stand having a pint, having a hot dog, but not everybody's allowed onto the pitch to play.
No.
You have to earn it and get there and enjoy it when you do.
You sure do, man. You sure do. Absolutely.
Conor, listen, thanks very much for coming on. Great to have you on. Just as a big fan of watching you over the years. Great career. Thanks very much for coming on. And
Chrissy, no bother at all, man. No problem at all. I wish you well with it and your time in Dubai.
Thanks
Keep
very
in touch
much.
For sure, yeah.
I'll try send some sunshine back to you if I can.
Do that. Look after yourself, man. Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Emerald Athlete podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave a review and don't forget to check out our Instagram page, the Emerald Athlete Podcast.